Boopity boop. Why did, see, I hit update before I did that and it still screwed that up. Front end live. Canyon app part 2. Public. Let's go over working with external APIs. Refactoring our code. Testing. And building out components. Education, no, it's not made for kids. Save. Stream's current bitrate is lower than the recommended bitrate. We're going to use a bitrate of 4,500 kilobits per second. Why? What's my bitrate? My bitrate is 6,000. I don't know what you're talking about. Let's move our camera down here to the corner. Actually, there's normally nothing over here. I'm normally looking at my screen though. We'll put it back over here. Okay, that's there. And let's get the Twitch updated. Video producer, stream manager. Edit stream info. Yes, it didn't update this either. Front end live. Building a DBD Canyon app. Let's code a DBD app. Add the web development tag to that. Done. Updating. Run some ads while we take a look at all of this stuff. That's there, that's there, that's there. And open our whoa. I opened the wrong thing. Code. There we go. Open the subfolder. I'm having a hard time seeing my npm. Start. Don't want you over there. I want you over here. Local ghost 3000. There we go. We are ready to go. Okie dokie. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Front End Live. I am your host, James Wilkinson. Happy Friday. It is my goal with this channel to showcase you what it's like to be working as a front-end developer through and through. All the different things that we consider and think of when we are building applications. And so we started off with creating the UI for this lovely little application here. And I wanted a mobile first application to make a very quick lookup. So over the last few days, I have done a lot of work. And we were going to do some GraphQL stuff for our perks, which we haven't actually done yet. So we can still work on doing that. But today I'm going to go through everything that we've done so far and just give you kind of like a code review over what we've done. So we made our UI. And so this is just using Bootstrap. And so there's a bunch of different various things that I've done here just to build our UI and build our UI in a mobile friendly manner. As well as get in all of the different features that we planned on doing. So filters where I can filter all of the perks by the killer or the survivor or the category that they're in, as well as a search where you could search by the perk name. And I had also thought it would actually be really cool to search by keywords. So I could be like feet and it would show me the perk, like this perk here, and you know, this perk that's here at the very end that has a foot on it, because the whole idea of this is to be a very quick reference for, I'm playing the game, I see the icon pop up on my screen, what does that icon mean? And then I added a status effect, so I wanted to do the same thing for that. So we'll use that same thing there. And then we're also going to go into a perk roulette, which is going to randomly give us 4 perks. And then I started populating the how to play. Now this is just a static thing. Like this didn't have to be any database related stuff. So this is all done in HTML. There's nothing wrong with writing plain old HTML and static data in your website. Not everything needs to come from a database. And if you want your website to be fast and very quick, you actually don't want to make a database. Like this loads really quickly. And then finally, my friend showed me an API that existed already for stats here. Now, this is not a very mobile friendly page, but we did make it mobile friendly, making sure that this little image here doesn't split out, because in the regular page, it looks like this. So let's hop into the code and take a look at what this looks like now. So let's take a look at the organization of our folders first. So we added in a containers and a components folder. And in our containers folder, at the top root of that, we have our app. Our app here is just the router. All this does is handle the routing of all of our pages and render the container component that relates to that route. We then, of course, have our container components. And so we have our perks list, our status effects, our roulette, our tutorials, our stats, and our home. Our home is our landing page. And you'll see that here we have our logo, and that just links to our logo. And then we have all of the buttons that we did on the page there. So you'll see this is using Bootstrap, as well as we are mixing in regular CSS as well. Now the perk button is being pulled in from app.scss. This is stuff that's going to be global to the entire application. It technically should be refactored and stuck into here because it doesn't exist anywhere else besides here. So then we have the same thing for the perks listing. And so right now I just have all of those icons. This is what's going to end up being changed over later. All of these icons, I just rendered them to the page so that we could get a look at the UI. There's nothing wrong with using fake data to render your UI and then come in and refactor later with the update. So right now you see that this is only rendering an array of images. So when we actually hook this up to real data, you know, for the most part, the API stuff won't do anything to our view until we actually populate this particular object, this is array that we are using to populate the page. When we do that, we're going to add a bunch of more different details to that. And so this will actually end up changing a little bit, most likely. But that's okay. It's not going to change drastically. Right now, you'll see here that that piece of data has one piece of data and we're passing it a thumbnail and we're passing it a perk. This is a typical React passing down your props. So this is kind of a smarter component. And then the perk item itself is the dumb component. And you'll see here that it just takes in, let's put some space here. It takes in a thumb that's going to be a string. And so this is just our props destructuring here. Everything that is our props will go in here. And then we can use that here. So you see that here, a thumbnail. And so we're just referencing the images and throwing in there. And then when we click, we're doing a handle show. All this does is use Bootstrap's mode off for hide and showing our content. And then you'll see here, once again, some static content that we will eventually replace with props, because this is going to be the same icon for every particular, this is going to be the same behavior for every single thing that we render in this list. So that makes it a clear indication for props. This doesn't need to have any type of state or anything in it at all. And then we have our roulette. So you just see that this is a picture here. Now I'm going to take this and also put this on the status effects, because our status effects doesn't have a back button and we are actually live. This code is being pushed and published to production every time I make a commit. So there not being a back button actually makes it a little bit difficult for a user to actually take a look at things. All of the status effects you're going to see on screen. So now that's got a back button and everything. And then our tutorials, you'll see once again, this is actually all static content. And once again, nothing wrong with static content. It renders fast. If your content doesn't change very often, there's no reason to pull it from an API. So now, speaking of that, let's take a look at our perks list. See our filters here? The survivors, the categories, and the killers don't actually change very often. So once we get these, we don't actually need to be on this page load pulling this from a database. We can actually just hard code these in. And there's, once again, no reason that you shouldn't do that because these don't change that often. And if you are pushing to production every day, you can make that change quickly. If you're not pushing to production every day, the change is going to take a little while. However, your backend also needs to do the change too, right? To add that new character or that kind of thing. And so that could also change. The only reason you would pull this is if it's coming from like a CMS. And this is really dynamic content. However, that's where, you know, if you're having performance concerns, take a look at what can you actually hard code and stop pulling from a database, because the less calls you have externally to your app, the better. Now this is just using some really cool fancy CSS. I just tricked it. I made a background and then I rotated that background, but rotating that would also rotate your image. And then so I just reverse rotated this image. So we rotated this backwards the opposite way. And then now we have our listing here to give this little thing. And now up here, this is Bootstrap's modal. All we've done is replace the CSS with it and added in a nice little image in the background that makes it kind of resemble more of the Dead by Daylight application. Okay, now let's take a look at this Your Stats section, because this part, it was really interesting to work on. So we have here a giant listing of, this is everything that can come back from this API and what its plain text English looks. So these are just dictionaries. And I split these dictionaries up into 3 different sections because there's 3 main sections here. And so here we have a bunch of state declarations where we're just setting what each one of these is going to be. And each one of these is a stats entity that's going to have a name and a value, and that's going to be an array. So once we go down into our actual functions here, this is your basic React form type of work through here. You need an on change event so that when you're typing into your input actually gets typed into, because once you attach state to it, it wants to, you know, kind of keep it populated. And then on your submit, this is where we're actually doing our action. So we're stopping the default form submit, which would be to send you to a page. And then we're running our fetch stats, and we're taking the value from the input field and sending that as our ID. And then our set stats is an async function, taking in our Steam ID. And so here is our response. So you'll see this is not the Steam API. This required a proxy. And working with the proxy was very difficult. So when we had the Steam API here verbatim, it would give us a CORS problem. And that's because the Steam API wants communication from server to server. And obviously your web browser is not a server. It runs on top of a server. So we need to tell this function to act like it's coming from a server. So we have to use a proxy. In order to do that, we had to use create React apps setup proxy. Now, this was honestly really confusing to work with because some proxies do a replace and some proxies do an addition. So the create React app proxy works by finding the key that you supply. So this is the key that we're supplying, and then appending that key as well as anything after it to your target. So this is an append and not a replace. So we had to take off part of the API and put it on here, because what I had earlier was Steam. I just wrote /Steam and then this because I thought it was going to replace. Why did I think it was going to replace? Because in Heroku, that's how that one actually works. Here, it's looking for /version over 02 and replacing it with this. So you'll see this has /version 002 on the end of it, and the proxy for this one does not, because the create React app proxy is an appendage, works by appending, and static works by replacing. And so we had to update that to get that to work on both sides. But that's working now, and we can actually hit this API. Now, we need to work on some error handling for this API. So when you do a response, if the response is not an OK, let's throw an error. We're not currently handling that error, we're just throwing it. After that, we're going to get our data. So whenever you get data from a fetch request, you need to take that response and fetch it and turn it into JSON. So we're going const data equals await.json. Then I have these 3 functions here for this mapping. Actually, these 4 functions here for parsing the data. This is something that I feel is a little bit not very clean, and we're probably going to have to clean this up a little bit better. But let's go over what's going on so far. So we're creating a new variable here, and we're going to wait for data to come back, which is waiting for the response to come back, which is waiting for fetch to finish. So we're just doing a chain. If we're using promises, this will be .then. So here we're waiting for that, and then we're going to grab the index here. So I wanted the data that comes back. The object that it's called is player stats, and inside that object is a stats object. And now I want to run a filter. So an array filter, what it does is your return, if your return is true, the item gets populated into this here. If the return is false, the item does not. So we're looking in the killer stats lookup dictionary. So we're taking our dictionary, looking for this key here. So we're passing it the key. If that key exists, it's going to be going into killer stats map. If it doesn't exist, it won't be going into there. And this is just a loop. So this works the same thing with here, but we have different maps. This last one was a little bit more confusing. This is for all of the things that don't map into those. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a filter, but this time, if this returns true, or this returns true, or this returns true, so the pipes are the or, this is all the same functions here, then the entity exists in the map. So we're going to wrap this, because if any one of these is true, that means it's going to populate this object with that entity. We want the opposite of that, so we just turn to not. So if any of these are false, we want to populate this map. Then we actually just go through and set all of those slices of state, and I'm maintaining the original object as well. Then down here in my container, I'm going to check here to see if that original larger state object exists that I've manipulated for everything else. And then I'm just going to run a bunch of different loops to go over that stuff. So here we've got the killer stats. What this is saying here with this ampersand, or not the ampersand, the question mark, this is another ES6 syntax that allows us to just essentially, without this here, it's going to say this might be undefined, is going to give us an error. So what we want to do is this just says, if it is undefined, don't bother. So make sure this is defined, then map. This is just a regular for each that we would have done. So for I equals I plus plus, etc. We're passing it in the entity being each entry in the killer stats, and then an index value because we need to apply a key. And then once again, we're going through that killer lookup, passing it that stat name, and then also going to go through and pass it that value. We're going to do the same thing for survivor stats, the same thing for generic stats, and then the same thing for the unknown stats. So now we can actually go through and do this here. Let me enter my Steam ID, which is up in this picture here, 765 61198 19001107. Now I can run and get my stats. And so now you see here all our killer stats, all our survivor stats, and our generic stats. And then we have our unknown stats. Okay, cool. We don't know what these mean. I've reached out to the DBD people to see if we can figure out what all of these mean so we can actually get some real information on there. Now on the bottom here, you have all of our achievements. So I actually just got all of these achievements here. Now I think these are JPEGs. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and pop these onto the list. So here we have achievements, each achievement's map, achievement name, and achievement name. So now achievement name. So let's not make this a UL anymore. And so we wouldn't be making it an LI anymore because we're just going to have a bunch of images here. And so we're going to be returning an image whose source is going to be computed. So we're going to throw it into here. And it's going to be images slash achievements slash achievement name. Achievement name plus dot JPEG. So this is actually the old-fashioned way of doing this. There we go. So let's just clean this up a little bit. Image source and then alt will also be our achievement name. So compute this, pass it that, and now we have an achievement. I want to make sure I spell everything correctly, so I'm going to copy paste that. Let's go into our public images, rename, paste, just to make sure we have achievements named the right way. And then we have a byte for the entity. Okay, so now let's go back to our application and look, we have a bunch of broken images. Yay, that's okay. Ooh, I didn't mean to. I'm just gonna quickly go and grab my Steam ID so I don't have to keep typing it in there. There we go. Okay, so we have a bunch of broken images. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. Inspect this. See how this is all capitals and our images are not. So let's take achievements name dot to lowercase. I think that's a function. And we're going to have to try again. Okay, so images. Actually, I think we need to go into slash images. How did I do this with my perks? Yes, it's slash images because we are running on a server, so we need the root. Let's close all these things that we're not working on. And let's go back to our stats. Okay, go to slash images slash achievements slash achievements dot name to lowercase dot JPEG. Okay, so now it's just saying that we can't find this image. So let's take a look at what our images are formatted as. They're not actually all lowercase. You see that? See how they actually are camel case. So let's run a Photoshop function. To process all of these images to change their names. So we are going to do a batch process. Haven't done this in a while. I think it's actually image processor I want to do. Save in the same location. That's actually just going to process it with the same name. Which is not actually what we want to do. Let's take a look. Because there's a lot of things here. We don't want to actually have to do this. Let's see if we can find a function that'll do that for us. Oh, good morning, Brendan. Thanks for watching. This is what I do as a daily basis for my job type of stuff. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's go with convert file names to lowercase windows. Copy the below code, paste it into Notepad, and then save the Notepad as rename files.bat. Put the rename files.bat into the directory of your files reside. Just double click run and run the batch file for file in this directory. Do a rename the below code syntax for the command for aspire variable command do command command purpose for for loop in a programming language, no terminology, variable host name of their command do command for property. Okay, cool. Add this here by 4 lower, change the line to upper. Okay. What do other people say? Let's give it a try. Public images achievements. Missing an opening after keyword 4. Let's give it a try. Missing opening parentheses is after keyword. None of these functions are actually working, girl. Oh, I opened PowerShell, so I should use the PowerShell command. Oh, path to folder, huh? Why? No, don't do that. Paste it in here. What? What in Semi Hill are you doing? Well, boom. There we go. All lowercase images. Look at that. Don't need the PowerShell anymore. See if that solves our problem. And of course, I don't have my Steam ID anymore in my clipboard. ACH sacrifice for survivors IAM. Okay, let's take a look at the Dead by Daylight wiki for achievements. This is where I grabbed the images from. We're probably going to have to do some type of manipulation achievements. So the first achievement that we're looking at is ACH sacrifice for survivors AIM. So sac ra. Oh, because I don't have that image. Okay. Chapter 19, survivor _ 2. Okay, it looks like I still don't have a proper index of what each of these images relates to. I see there's an index down here that says ACH DLC Killer 1, ACH DLC Killer 2, Killer 3, were the original names listed on the Steam store page for the Last Breath chapter achievements. Okay, let's go with DBD achievements. Let's go tracker. There was a website that I saw that was tracking these. Let's just see if we can grab. A trophy index. Because this didn't work. So these images are not correctly named to match up with the Steam API return. We can't change the Steam API return. So we want to find a way to map these all properly. Okay, so let's take a look at DBD achievements tracker. Now see, when we did this, unfortunately, the names that are saved by these images are also not adequate. So we can't really save these images to get this information out either. Let's take a look at their network call. They don't make a network call for this. This is actually just plain old returning HTML. Okay, so that won't help us. This is also using an index to do all of the images here. See if either of these. We know. I'm gonna grab this on my other browser that has my login information on it. Excuse me. Oh, the stats website didn't work anyways. This is not my data. That's very concerning that this application is pulling in such things. My achievements. There we go. Let's see if this one is using names. Nope. Once again, they renamed all of the images to match the achievements that they put into their database. There was a website and I saw it and it did it and I'm trying to find it. Oh, very cool, Brendan. Sheena's taking this stuff in school. You got a sword. What did you get a sword in? Oh, thanks for following, Zarkurd. I am working on a DBD companion app. And so right now I have all of these images that represent the achievements and I want to give them a name that actually relates to the achievement list in itself. And so the app looks like this. So we've got a list of perks. This is going to be a GraphQL pulling of the data. We're going to do the same thing for status effects. We're going to give you some randomly assigned perks. Then we just have a page full of the tutorials I found helpful for the app. And then right now I was just working on the Steam integration here. Oh, I guess this should probably be on my other screen so I don't dox myself. I have shown all of you my... that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, none of that's too bad. So, you know, each one of these achievements, the actual particular name of it and what it means from Steam in order to Steam to the actual images is our big problem right now. Because we've got a bunch of different issues here. So actually, let's see if we can compile them based off of the wiki. Also, I should have been getting sound notifications. Not sure what happened there with my desktop audio. Second floor asylum. Actually, we could probably start renaming these. Because if we have the wiki's information, I mean, we can go through these here. And so if we're going to rename them, we don't need to do 2 lowercase anymore because we're going to make them the name that we want them to be. And so actually, let's just spit out this data. We need to return a fragment because this is React. What's wrong with this? You just didn't compile when I saved it. And I didn't save my Steam ID again. Put this in here. There we go. Okay, so sacrifice 4 survivors AIM. Let's take a look at the... None of that seems to match anything on this page. Okay, what about this KO escape? Nothing. Hatch escape. Oh, come on. Okay. ACH just means achievement. Sacrifice 4 survivors. Okay, let's see if we can find that one. Sacrifice. Total of 100 survivors, total of 1,000 or 500 survivors, 25 times. No, we don't have anything for that at all. Okay, what about escape KO? Escape. Ooh, lots of escapes. No, this isn't going to work at all. Hatch escape? Nope, we still need to find... Okay, we'll do that off stream. We'll come back to that. Let's focus on cleaning up our code then. So we have... Each one of these things here is the same code, but with a different piece of data. So let's go ahead and turn that into a component. That's textbook, something that we can turn into a component. So let's go to our components folder. Let's create a new folder. And we're going to call this a stats list. Component. Oops. I don't need TSX in my folder name. Stats list, new file, stats list.tsx. Now I actually think I am mixing up my terminology. So let me just make sure that this says stats export const stats. Oh, it's perks that I had a little bit messed up. So perks here you have is perks list. Oh, no, not delete. We're just going to call this perks. Yes, update my paths. We're just going to call this perks. Save app. It's just the perks page. Pull in perks from perks. Let's go back over to perks and rename the things to perks, and you will need to pull in perks. And we still have a failure to compile. Where did we miss? Stats list cannot be compiled under. Oh. And then here we have our lovely quick create React functional I want React functional export component, React functional component. This one? No, not that one. We want a React functional component with the arrow. React arrow functional component. There we go. Stats list. Okay, so now let's also type this. So this is going to be a functional component. And this functional component is going to have props. That is a, we're going to have a stats. Let's type this after we make the switch. Stats list cannot be compiled under isolated branch because it's considered a global script file and add an import export const stat. Yes, you should be able to compile now. Works roulette stats status tutorial. Our stats list. Okay, we'll just save it and see if we can get, there we go. Get our thing to compile again. Okay, our perks list is working again after we renamed it, and our stats is working okay. So now perks, stats, we're going with stats, and we're going with stats list. Okay, so let's take our iterable. Okay, top one. Okay, killer stats here. We can take this here. We're going to copy this. And we're going to open our return and paste it. Bring in what we need for our bootstrap. Okay. Okay, so now this is going to be stats list dot map each stat stats list lookup stat name stat value. Okay. And so we're going to need stats list and okay, props, we're going to need stats list. And how should we do our lookup? Not exist on type children reactor. Yeah, that's because we didn't tell it that we're going to pass it. Oh, what's the syntax here? I did this on perks. The syntax. On our perk item. Oh gosh, and I also called that something stupidly weird. Is an open curly brace. So yeah, go open curly brace. Stats list is going to be an array. No, it's just going to be an array. There we go, stats list, and we can map over arrays, so that's going to be perfectly fine. All right, we need to tell it that it's an array of something specific. So that's actually going to go back to our stats. Okay, so we're going to pass this our stats list component. Import our component, and we're going to pass it the stats list of killer stats. Okay. Type boolean is not a stats list. Type stats entity undefined is not assignable to type array. Type undefined is not assignable to type array. The expected type comes from property stats list, which is declared here on type intrinsic stats list. Okay, so we just have a type mix match, which is fine. We're going to fix that in a second. We have our interfaces here. So I need to import my interfaces. Stats entity is what I want. Okay, so that fixes that there. We're telling it that it is, where's the code that we were just working on? Okay, stats list. Okay, so now what's the problem? Type stats entity is I really hate TypeScript. These messages just make no sense. Stats list, killer stats. Cons, killer stats. It is an array of stats entities. Stats list. Stats list should be an array of stats entities. Oh, so then what is your problem? Or undefined is not assignable to type. What do you mean? I don't understand what you're trying to say. The expected type comes from property stats list, which is declared here on type intrinsic attributes and stats list stats. Huh? TypeScript, why do you just make no sense? Hello, Jimmy's robot. We're wrangling with TypeScript right now. Okay, but let's also just pass the stats list lookup as well. And that's going to be the killer stat lookup. Doesn't have a problem. Okay, and so you're also going to get a stats list lookup, which is going to be an array. The element as an any because index expression is not of type number. Let's just take this off for a second. You're an array. TypeScript. You are confusing the heck out of me. TypeScript props. TypeScript error on passing props. No, you're confusing me. That's not related to what I'm trying to see. Type stats entity array or undefined is not assignable to type array. Type undefined is not assignable to type array. Why do you think that should be undefined though? That should not be undefined. Interface stats entity, a name and a value. Stats entity array or null. That's fine. Stats list. This is an array of stats entities. Stats list lookup is an array. Why are you doing this to me? TypeScript, this makes no sense. I am moving it from one file to the other. Element implicitly has an any type because index expression is not of type number. Stats list lookup. Is an any. Okay, so why do we have that as any in the first place? It's just an object of key value pairs. It should be able to figure that out. This is a type of any because expression of type string can't be used to index type. Okay, so let's export interface stats lookup. And it's going to have a key. TypeScript interface for object. All right. It'll be a key, string, and a string, right? And you're a stats lookup. And you're a, whoops. I hate it when I do that. And you're a stats lookup. And you're going to be a stats lookup. And you have a key and a value. Good, 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 good. Now let's just get you to compile. Okay, so stats list is a stats entity. I see. I knew that would work, but I don't understand what I've done, so I feel naughty about it. Killer stats is a stats entity array, so I don't know why I have to explicitly say it's a stat entity array. I should have been able to, in a different spot, say that. But now we should have the same output. Let's go grab my Steam ID again. Killer stats, there we go. That seems bigger than normal. I don't remember. Okay. But now, look, we can simplify our code. Here's our stats list again. Oh, yeah, it is bigger because I literally did it twice. Okay, now we can do our survivor stats. Survivor. Whoa. Survivor. We are going a little slow. There we go. Survivor stats lookup. And whoa. Let's try that again. And our generic stats lookup. Now, we don't have a map for the other one. So actually, let's see if this is, let's try making it optional and see if we can do that in a second. Take this, let's get my, refresh our page. And look, we have our stats again. Looks like I may have duplicates again, column. Okay, and then we have our unknown stats. So now in our perks here, not our perks, our stats listing here. I'm wondering if we can use this same component, but mark stats list lookup as optional. If we marked stats lookup as optional, we would have to add some logic into here to know whether or not we had a stats list lookup to use this or to use the other one. And honestly, this is as simple enough as it really needs to be. Okay, so we cleaned that up. Let's take a look at this here. This says perk item, and so we have perks. I have my stats list. I don't have a stats list item. And then we have a perk. We have a perk item, and we have a perk. This does implement an individual perk. So let's just drop item from the CSS. This is perk. This is perk. This is perk. This is perk. And rename you are a perk. And update. Awesome. I will be right back. Okay, I am back. And I think I remembered why this stopped working. With the why I had to cast this. Let's go to our stats. Our stats list. Okay, and our stats list is fine. Our stat. Okay, so I had to cast this because generic stats can be stats entity or undefined. And if it's undefined, it fails. So that's why I have to say, no, it's always going to be stats entity. So I need to tell it not to be undefinable. And then I wouldn't have to cast it. So generic stats, use state or undefined. I'd have to research that some more. Okay, let's make sure we didn't break our perks because I totally was in the middle of doing that and then completely forgot what I was doing. Okay, we got a perk. It's got a thing. It's got a thing. Okay, we didn't destroy our perks. Great. Oyster coffee. A caramel iced coffee, actually, because I did International Light. Okay, what can we do next? Let's take a look at that's just going to be a UI. That's going to be a UI. We can do that later. This is populating data. We can do that later. We've gone through and repurposed this into particular functions. And then we have this piece of ugliness down here. Let's hide achievements for now because that's perks. Perk. Stats list. Stats. And let's take a look at our unknown stats. We're going to pass you unknown stats as an understand, and then we're actually just not going to pass you a stats lookup at all. Whoops, I just went to full screen. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, so now it's going to complain that stats lookup is declared here. Property is missing a type. So now let's go to our stats list and actually say that this function here is optional. Let's Google how to make a prop optional. Okay, so function arrow components React optional props. What is the syntax for that? Props at name. And then typing our props. Stateless component interface, stateless component props, children, any prop types. That's React arrow function component types. Go to example. Yeah, I guess I could do that, but we're using prop destructuring. Functional arrow with props destructuring. TypeScript optional props with destructuring. In order to not destructured undefined. My function, my destructured props. Option 1, option 2, option 1, fully option 2. I need to tell it that the prop is optional. That's why. There we go. And then, yes, the object is possibly undefined. Yeah, that's not the syntax you can use there. That's fine. Okay, so now, ooh, this would be a perfect example for a ternary, but I hate ternaries a lot. So we're going to do stats list lookup. So if we have the stats list lookup, we run this function. No. Parsing area, comma expected. Right, we need a fragment. React if else JSX. I forgot the rest of the syntax. If logged in, else. I thought there was a different. No, inside my render. React if else inside JSX render. Render if. Yeah, conditional rendering. This is what I want. If is logged in. Oh, am I just doing this in the wrong spot? I swear I could do it in here though. Inline if logical and operator. Yeah, that's what I want. But what do I do with the else? Will appear in the output. If it's false, React will ignore and skip it. Oh, it is a ternary. Stats lookup. You've got it. And oop. And oop. Come on. Boop, 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 boop. And if you don't, poop. except you didn't have it, so you wouldn't do this. You would just do this. Save. Okay, and then our stats this is rendering okay. Well, you know what? We didn't do any testing. Maybe we can try and write a test. Let's take out the unknown stats list. Let's check our app. Compiles. That's not my ID. Unknown stats. There we go. And everything else works fine. Hooray! Okay, so now let's test it. Let's write a test. I'm really bad at writing tests, but I think we've made this in a nice functional aspect that we can write a test for our dumb component at least. I don't feel confident enough in my ability to test this logic that I made. Now I haven't figured this out yet, but this logic is also a little silly. I think this can probably be one function that parses my data and does a switch statement instead of these for statements, because the switch could be if it's in the killer map, push to this array. If it's in the survivor map, push to this array, so that I iterate over the object once. Because right now I'm iterating over the object 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So that's 4 times more memory I'm using than I actually need to be. So actually, why don't we do that? Let's do it inline first and then see if we can make it more functional by taking it out of here. But we wouldn't. But this is already kind of functional because we are calling everything. So data, we're waiting for our data. If we did data map, we actually want data dot player stats dot stats dot map stat and index. Player stats. Index. Okay, so switch. Switch statement JavaScript because I forget how to write them. Expression. Case. Stat.name. Okay, switch on stat.name. Okay, case. New date.getDate default 6 Yeah. Case would be killer stat lookup. Switch statement lookup in index. JavaScript. That's for a lookup map. Mood. Case. This isn't, no. Expression. Conditional switch statement in JavaScript. This is looking up if the result is 1, but I need to actually look up to see if the result is true or false. Okay, right there, switch up. Since we're checking a range, we'll perform the operation in each case to check if each expression is evaluating to true, then break out of the statement once the requirements for true have been satisfied. Ooh, yes, this is actually one. There might be an association in which you will need to evaluate a range of values in a switch block as opposed to a single value as in our example above. We can do this by setting our expression to true and doing an operation with each case statement. Yes, this is what we want. Okay, true. Case killer stat lookup stat dot name, right? Type string is not comparable, type boolean. Switch maybe. Killer stat lookup stat dot name. Case. I just want to finish the function so I get what I want to do. I need to evaluate if this is true. Type string is not comparable to type boolean. Yes, this returns a string. Switch statement true. Oh, some of the meantime discovered switch true construction while reading the code of an open source project. Some of the programs didn't know at that point would also probably know that switch statements allows for matching. Case true, case whatever, unreachable. Why does everyone use dates? Yeah, I needed to evaluate to true or false. JS array contains includes, right? Not call. Type string has no call. So confused. Switch statement array includes. What functions we got? This is what we want. Array1 dot includes 2. Killer stats lookup allows manipulation and formatting of text strings and determination of location of substring. This expression is not callable. Type string has no call signatures. Killer stat lookup ooh, because it's an object. Includes for object. JavaScript object includes. Not prototype, object. Right, has own property. That's the one. Okay, killer stats dot has own property of stat name. Switch statement because I forgot the syntax again. JavaScript, please. Colon. If it has it, do this. Okie dokie. Okay, so. Whoa! Magic Mike. Okay. Switch. Next case will be survivor stats map. Okay, so now the more complicated one. Which is actually simplified by this, I think, because if none of those are true, we now reach our default statement. Is unknown stats map dot push stat dot name. Let's just comment that out for a minute. Stat will be a stat entity. Not find name killer stats map. Killer stats map, survivor stats map, generic stats map, and unknown stats map. And each one of these is going to be a stats entity array. Right? Argument of type string is not assigned to parameter type. What? Oh, I guess we didn't need the index. Oh, right. We don't want to push the stat. We want to push the name. We want to push the whole thing. Come on, catch up. Variable killer stats map is used before being assigned. Killer stats map is used before being assigned. I don't think you can await this anymore either. I mean, it was used before it was assigned. I don't think this will fix it. We get our data. Ooh, put that out of my face. That's not what I want. Okay. Fetch stats gets called on click. It's an asynchronous function. Await the response. If the response is okay, if the response is not okay, throw an error. Otherwise, data equals await the response. Parse stat data. Await our data. Then parse stats data. Data is going to be Steam API, I believe. This is just saying make sure we have it before we try and evaluate it. Okay, so what is going on here though? Variable killer stats map is used before being assigned. Oh, because these don't have a default assignment? An empty array? Yeah, okay. Now the main problem here you do expect a return, don't you? Can I return a switch? Nope. Map expects a return. Switch inside of a map. Hmm. That's what I thought. And then just some types errors because we moved this out of here. Oh, we accidentally imported something that we shouldn't have. Okay, everything is building. Let's watch our application break. Oh, wow. Uh, it almost didn't break. Generic stats is broken, but let's take a look. That's going to be because generic stats, set generic stats, killer stat, look up. Generic stat, look up. Survivor stat, look up. Case, killer stat, look up. Has own property stat name. Survivor stat, look up. Generic, this should be stat, look up. Has own property stat name. Cool, now we've simplified that code quite a bit and we're iterating over our object once. There we go, yay. Okay, I am going to leave it there for now and go make lunch and head to my appointment. Oh, I completely said I was going to do testing and I still once again didn't do testing. How like me leaving testing to the very, very end. But I swear I'm going to try and learn it. I promise you. We're going to get there. I also want to go through a tutorial to build the Node GraphQL backend for this. Yeah. And then we're going to do, we're going to copy what we did here for here, or we might actually just populate this because I don't think there's a lot of stats. We don't really, there's not as many status effects to go through as there are perks. So we don't need to search and filter and stuff. So we don't need to use an API. And we actually won't be filtering. What we're going to do is we're going to get all the data here. And then these filters are actually just going to work by array.filter. And it's going to repopulate the object that populates this. And then it's just going to change it automatically, dynamically. And so we don't have to make any API calls there. So we're going to make one larger API call, could be a little longer, to do all of this stuff in one big spot. We'll do that dynamically, and then we're going to use that same GraphQL API to try and pull for random perks. Off stream, I might make the design here to show the Shrine of Secrets looking like thing. If you know any tutorials that are good for Dead by Daylight, let me know and I'll populate them in there. And now we have our stats going in here with a much cleaner aspect of code. Actually, so let's do this. Get status. We're going to add all of our changes. We're going to commit everything. And we have refactored code and moved to more components. I love how Git has finally got away from master and is named main. Okay, so we're now in the process. Oops. I need my other browser for this. Hold on. The one that has my self logged in. Oh, and I need my authenticator. Actually, let me walk you through how I did this here. So Heroku is automatically set up to connect to Git. When it notices there's something new in Git, it pulls it and it tries to build it. Now it does that based off of parameters that I supply. So let me log into Heroku here. Bring this over for you here. So we provided this build pack. This is a specific open source build pack that gives Heroku the set of instructions to build. And then it goes ahead and builds that based off of every time that there is a push to GitHub. So we've connected our GitHub and then automatically deploy the main branch. I can manually deploy it as well. And then so you see here, it's already building. We've got our build progress. And so this is the build pack. So see, it downloads the build pack and it's detecting we're going to use Node.js to build. It creates its little environment. So this is much like if you're using a Docker instance. This is like the Docker image that you would copy because you're kind of, this is the computer that has the things installed on it that I need to run my command on. Make me an instance of that computer. Now run my commands, which you'll see here is run my commands. And then this is also telling it the set of commands I want it to do. And so that's where it's going to tell it to build production instead of just build. So you'll see rack.scripts to build, which is going to build a production instance. And then Heroku, this build pack also then goes into, looks up the framework existing, and then it looks for static.json, which is a file that we put in. That's where we got our set up our proxy for Heroku, because it's still a single page application running on a server. So it's still client side and we still needed to say, do this part through server. So we did that through static.json. And then that was our build. And then it's downloading the build pack again. It says that it's looking for the supplied files. It's a static HTML. We're going to release it. And then so it starts to mount it. And so all we had to do in our code is set up static for our proxy. And in our package JSON, we had to tell it which version of npm and node to use so that it would build properly. And then so it's using build. However, it uses a production build as far as I understand, but that's what I want to confirm here, because this is saying run build and not build with production flag. But I was told that this package, that is what it does. So if we look at this package here, actually, that's not the package. That was the Node.js package. This is the create rack package. And so you'll see this go in and it creates all of our stuff. And so it already puts our proc file in there that tells it to run the server. And our static.json also had to include our root. So when you run the server, where do we start it? Okay, so now that said we were deployed. So now we can head on over to our app. Oh, we didn't save stats. Uh-oh. So we probably deployed something broken. By accident. Oh, no, it says it's up to date. Okay, there was no changes. We did save. But now we can go to our full-on website, dbdcompanion.com, my stats, put in my Steam URL, and there we go. Our application is, actually that is not the same. So let's do a hard refresh. We changed the look and feel of that. There we go. Now we know we're running the new application. And there we go. All right, let's leave it there for today. We will probably get back on stream later and actually play some Dead by Daylight. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see